A wave of good news just hit Tesla investors. So first, Elon Musk confirmed that SpaceX will IPO in 2026 at a potential $1.5 trillion valuation. And this isn't just a headline. It directly will affect Tesla investors, and the ripple effects could reshape the entire Musk ecosystem. Well, we're going to break down exactly why. Second, Elon doubled down on something even bigger. Unsupervised full self-driving is nearly solved. And he went further, saying that once the dust settles, it will be obvious. Waymo never really had a chance. Today, we'll unpack both of those announcements. We've got the bulls here with us today. We've got the rational bull, Jeff Lutz. I call him Mr. Incredible. He's the executive. We got the bot bull, the master forecaster. He's the slayer of spreadsheets. And we have the analytical bull, the master investor. He's the man with the answers. James from InvestAnswers. Welcome, everybody.
Hi, Herbert.
Hey, Herbert.
Hello there. Lots of good news.
We got one of the other CyberBulls today, so I have a different name, different persona today.
What are you talking about?
Cern, aka Tesla Basher Mama.
Oh.
Ooh, nice.
Tesla Basher Mama. She's pretty much she's lives up to that name too. So the first one is SpaceX. Looks like that Elon did confirm that there's a plans for SpaceX to go IPO next year. And so a lot of Tesla investors are wondering, can I get in on that game? Elon did say just about a year ago, he said that loyalty deserves loyalty. He said, I will not forget, I will reward Tesla long-term shareholders with the ability to get in on this game. And then the question came up. A lot of people are saying, hey, I have Tesla shares. Should I save some of that for SpaceX? So James, why don't you start us off? Tell us what's going on with Tesla and what your answer is. I know you did a video on this.
Yeah, it was the AJ posted something that caused quite a lot of consternation. He said basically, oh my God, SpaceX IPO is coming. I'm going to offload, layer out, hedge out or whatever of my Tesla position or a big part. I think it was maybe partly misunderstood, but it did trigger a good series of questions in my mind. And I always go back to analyzing them, SpaceX, how big could it potentially be? Where could it all lead us? And could it be bigger than Tesla? How is it fairly valued right now? How much could it be worth if there is an IPO? How much could they raise? And then how much could it grow? And then I compared the TAMs of SpaceX to Tesla. And I've got a couple of slides. If you guys are interested, we can have a look at them. But there's a couple of things that probably are more important. And that is the fact that Elon Musk, it's all about scale and speed for him, nothing more. And once he realized, he's been dropping breadcrumbs. I think he plays coy. I think he knows a lot more about the direction of where his industries are going. But I think Abhi Tripathi said once he began to put two and two together around, what the IPO could do, it's all about speed. He can raise money so he can get data centers in space. And I tried to analyze what that actually means as well. How much benefit is there? There's an awful lot of upfront cost to get them up there in the first place. But if they're up and running, then they become real cheap, real fast. And the payback period could be as little as 3 years. And then they start minting a lot of profit. But when you look at how Starlink works, their laser connectivity, the global network, and the putting compute in space is a complete no-brainer. And you've got the CEO of Google mentions it non-stop. You got Jeff Bezos trying to catch up, as well as all the rocket stocks on fire over the last week. It's kind of funny the way markets react to a narrative so fast. I think that's kind of the first amazing thing. But there's a couple of things that are kind of interesting too, is this. This is from Sawyer Merritt. I think he put it together. 2.5 trillion combined across the companies. But that's not the big story. The big story is, imagine if these things become the value they're potentially worth. Elon Musk could control 3 of the top 10 corporations on the planet. Can you imagine the hatred out of the EU if that happened? Everything is synergistic together. And no human in the history of the world has ever even gotten 2 in the top 10. This guy is primed to get all 3. So we can leave it there. There's a lot more to tell, but we just covered 3 big stories on itself. So I'd like to hear back from anybody else. Am I crazy or is this wild?
I think they're converging into the same companies, to be honest with you, and at a very high level. He's extending life, whether it's sustainable transport, whether it's interplanetary, the ability to explore that, and then the superhuman capabilities, Neuralink will give you, and then of course discovering, the span of the universe and meaning of it through XAI. They're just variants, honestly, of the same company. So this is why I think he's been hinting at this convergence, and I think it's an interesting thing. It'll be an interesting thing for us to talk about between now and whatever happens, right? We've got all these different scenarios out in front of us, but it is interesting to think about the companies he started. It's not that he's and I agree with it. He's controlling 3 of the top 10 companies potentially, but he created also 3 of the top 10 companies from scratch. And we may never find anybody, in the next, who knows, period of time, hundreds of years, with that capability. So just trying to analyze, just trying to understand the time we're living in now and what we're seeing and what we're witnessing. Sometimes we like to go in and microanalyze. Well, you said this would happen on this date. And on all these impossible things that have never been done before. But I think history is going to look back at this period of time and say, the amount of change and the amount of innovation is just off the charts. And hopefully we'll, I think what's going to honestly happen is this is all happening organically, even a lot of it without AI. And, AI is going to allow these kind of advancements and probably more to occur. So we're kind of at this point on the roller coaster where we're just about to go over the edge. So it's kind of exciting time to be alive. But I wouldn't be trying to overanalyze too much here. Remember, there's 10 million, I think, Tesla shareholders, and to try to understand how that population moves and thinks and I think they're all going to do one thing at one period of time. I think it's an interesting thing to pontificate. It's a hard thing to plan out and think that we know how this is going to play out. And it's so multivariant in nature. What's going to be true at that point in time is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think the reporting is saying that when SpaceX goes IPO, it'll be valued at $1.5 trillion. I did not hear Elon, push back on that part of it. But the reporting also said that they might raise $30 billion. And Larry Goldberg was saying, no, if you are valued at 1.5, you're going to raise $500 billion. This is a race to the largest AI data center. And who else has rockets that's reusable, that can send out these satellites, that can be data centers, and then they can raise that much money. So that two together is like just going to completely separate not only SpaceX, but Tesla, who's going to supply the chips, is going to get the access to the data, the AGI, hopefully, brilliance. And so this is just a massive win for Tesla.
It's interesting, Herbert. Well, first of all, just to go back to James' earlier point about Elon having 3 of the top 10 largest companies. Well, give it a few more years, you might have 5. Boring Company and Neuralink.
Boring Company
also to be massive. If you can 3D so the transportation network, that's a huge opportunity, as well as other things that Boring Company can do. Anyway, that's for another day. But certainly SpaceX going public and raising all its capital, while some Tesla shareholders may wish to gain more exposure to SpaceX, right? And no doubt that will happen. So to the extent that that does temporarily suppress Tesla's stock price, even if it does, I'm not convinced it will, but if it does, fundamentally, this is an unmitigated positive for Tesla. SpaceX is raising this capital so that they can accelerate the deployment of AI data centers in space. Well, who's going to be a partner in that with them? It's going to be Tesla. So, you can worry about the short term if you want, or you can focus on the long-term opportunity. And in my book, the long-term opportunity for Tesla just keeps getting better and better.
So, James, are you going to answer the question? How did you end up with some people are saying, hey, I'm going to try to take some of my Tesla shares out and I'm going to invest it in SpaceX. Be ready for that IPO. You're on mute.
Couple of things. We can try to look at it from many different dimensions. Why don't we start with the back and go back to the front? Actually, we should probably start at the front. So I have a couple of points here. One is TAMs, okay? First step is to compare the addressable market for Tesla versus SpaceX. And Tesla, coincidentally, is going after three biggest TAMs on the planet: labor, transport, and energy. And then AI and other synergies in SpaceX come later. So that's the first huge part. When I look at the relative TAMs, and it's very difficult to estimate the TAM of space, but Kathy Wood has it at $2.5 trillion. It's a bull case. Normally it's about 1.7 trillion. That's putting stuff in space, etc. Satellites, Starlink, all that good stuff, compared to 42 trillion TAM for Tesla by 2030. By the way, if we go out beyond 2030, they could be mining valuable stuff off asteroids in 2035 or 2040 that could be worth hundreds of trillions. We don't know that yet, but I'm just going out to 2030. That's the first part. And keep me honest here, you guys, Jeff and Cern. That's a big point. So that's a much bigger TAM for Tesla. I'll ignore the niche stuff. This is a very important point.
Can you go back? Because Brian Wang did some analysis, and he's going to do a show with me, and he's saying that space-based data centers is a larger TAM than robots, than humanoid bots.
But, and this is where it gets really interesting, who stands to benefit from that? What chips are going to go up into space? And that's where I have a big question, is this one. Space data centers, who makes the chips? Are they going to come from NVIDIA? Will it be radiation proof from NVIDIA? Or will it be AI7 or AI8? And that's still 3 to 4 years out. Remember, we're only going to 2030. It's going to take a long time to build this stuff out. They're not going to do it tomorrow, although Elon Musk probably wants it tomorrow. And then the advantages, obviously, the versatility of this new architecture from Tesla, AI5, 6, 7, 8, is quite incredible because it'll work in cars, bots, and in data centers. And once they radiation proof them, stick them in space with Starship, I mean, they can throw 2 payloads up a day probably in a couple of years, which would be 30, 50 megawatts. So I've got tons of data on that. But this is the big thing that I want Cern and Jeff and you, Herbert, to ping in on, is the SpaceX valuation. It's pre-IPO, it's at 800 billion. It might IPO at 1.5 trillion. So that's a 2x. When I compare that to Tesla, doing it 8x plus over the same time frame, we'll call it long term, out 5 to 7 years, there's a lot more upside from Tesla because I think SpaceX is very richly priced right now. So that's kind of a part of what I think about all this thing. SpaceX would be nice to have, but I would not be selling my Tesla shares to buy SpaceX. I wouldn't mind a little position in SpaceX, and I do have through some proxies, but that's kind of the way I see it right now. And I did the heavy math yesterday.
I'm thinking the same. If you look at the upside of what is Tesla adding to their business, it's insane with humanoids, with the Terafab. But on the humanoid front, I can't think of a better company that is positioned for massive success. So I don't know why you would be selling into that. But like I said, these aren't zero-sum games. And people should figure out what they want to do. But yeah, if SpaceX comes at IPOs at 1.5 trillion, I don't know if I'm running for that yet. So we'll have to see how it plays out. To see how the competition looks like as well, and when this occurs. So there's just a lot of variables. So there's nothing. It's fun to think about and talk about right now, but there'll be a lot of variables that play out between now and then. I'm not in the camp of investor bases just moving in monoliths of like everybody's going to do this and everybody's going to do that. I'm just not in that camp. I don't think that's how it works.
Don't underestimate the fear of missing out in the short term, and particularly while the initial SpaceX investors are locked up from the IPO. But once that lockup releases, there'll be a lot of early SpaceX investors looking to monetize some of their investment. And maybe some of them will actually want to put some money back into Tesla at that point.
Exactly. Cuts both ways. And that's the spillover.
Yeah.
And there's actually a huge spillover that I see too. If I compare the two companies, where's the money going to flow? We know the synergy. And you remember Peter Thiel's book, 0 to 1? Well, the synergy across the Musk industries is like 0 to 100 overnight. It's not 0 to 1 because each one 10x is the other. So when I look at SpaceX and think about it, okay, funding, okay, they're going to do an IPO. They'll get the funding from there, and they get funding from Starlink revenues. Risks, minimal risks. There's no, if something does blow up in SpaceX, there's no risk to Tesla and vice versa. And the Tesla upside, we've got the chips, we've got the maybe some type of energy storage, the AI capability from XAI, maybe Optimus bot to go to the moon to mine some stuff, to build a data center or a fab on the moon, or fabulous activities in space. I mean, there's so much more benefit for Tesla from SpaceX exploding upwards in value than anything else that I see. So the spillover is all in that direction. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, the way I look at it is, okay, so you said Tesla, SpaceX will IPO at 1.5 trillion. Well, that's where Tesla is right now.
Yep.
Tesla has Optimus bonds, the largest TAM we thought. Now, if it's true that space-based data centers is as large as or even bigger than Optimus, then they both have the same potential upside. Brian Wang has estimated that if a data center is using the chips, and let's say you're right, if they may use NVIDIA at first, depending on timing, right? But if they use Tesla's terafab chips, 70% of the cost of a data center is the chips. So Tesla will benefit from it, but so will SpaceX. And so I think that all of a sudden, they both have the same kind of potential future.
Yeah, well, it's tricky. And maybe you can share this slide with Brian Wang. I tried to calculate the impact. So if you look at the break-even and ROI of space-based data center versus Earth-based, it's a lot cheaper on Earth, like 50 cents to $1 a kilowatt hour, 3 to 5 year payback. It'll cost about $4 per kilowatt hour in space, but the payback can be faster because you don't have energy or maintenance costs or real estate purchasing or stuff like that. You got cooling efficiency. And this is where it gets really tricky. And I don't know if this is correct or wrong, but I do think the big problem is the upfront cost of getting everything into space and making it work. But then once it's up and running and working, it becomes far cheaper. And then the question is, how much benefit do you have from being in space? And what is the TAM and what is the market cap of that asset if you're there? And also consider all the other competition too. So there could come a time where energy and Earth-based data centers could be as cheap if they are forced to be very competitive. Kind of like what happened with Bitcoin mining. They went to the far regions of the planet with low energy to be able to mine very efficiently. The same thing could happen with data centers on the Earth. Anyway, it's fascinating to watch, and we'll be here with popcorn.
I think it remains to be seen. I think obviously long term, the TAM in space is equal to all of the GDP on Earth times, 1 million.
Yeah.
Well, that's long term, well beyond our lifetimes. So, you can expand these TAMs as much as you want. In the near term, Tesla's opportunity is a bit more front and center, in my opinion. Robotaxi's right on the doorstep. Optimus is not far behind. We know those businesses well. We know those have huge TAMs. Tesla's on the cusp of executing on those growth stories. The SpaceX story is super exciting and long-term incredible, but, it's a little bit further out, in my opinion.
Yes. There's one other wild card, unless you've got something to add, Jeff, to this as well. But that is the Mars boondoggle. That's not going to generate ROI. And I know that's part of the plan to be multiplanetary. That's going to take a long time and chew up a lot of resources. And that could impact SpaceX valuation unless they carve it out as a separate entity altogether. But that's a big thought on my mind as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's next, Herbert?
Mars quietened everybody.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we answered that question, SpaceX or Tesla, and we talked a little bit about space AI. Any last comments about that? Because, just a quick thing to you, James. A lot of the argument is that there is no not no, but very small amount of money they need to put, because they already built the rockets. They've already got Starlink. They're just, it's like they've already got the cost expenses on, versus other companies would have to build a rocket company. Sam Altman is shitting his pants right now, going, how do I create a rocket company? Otherwise, he's dead. Bezos is going to have to, accelerate his plans of Blue Origin. And then I think Google owns 9% of SpaceX. So maybe they're going to partner with SpaceX and say, hey, remember us? We're buddies. And I don't know what Zuckerberg's going to do. He's out in the water trying to figure out what to do next.
Well, he's gone from open source to closed
They're
source.
They're going to buy launch capacity from SpaceX and Blue Origin and Rocket Lab and all the different. There's going to be 4 or 5 options. They're just going to be at different price points, but not everybody's not going to create a rocket company from scratch. It's not going to happen.
No. In fact, Jeff, can I press you on that? Because I'm a big believer in winner takes most in many industries, although that's a little bit different if you look at the cell phone industry and some other industries, financial services and others. But if you look, people say, oh, FSD robotaxis, everybody's going to have them, and Tesla will have 15% share or 25% share, and everybody else is going to have a ton of share. But if you look at space as an analogy, guess who puts 95% of all matter into space? Elon Musk, in a private little company. So that's a classic case of winner takes most. Can the other space companies even be partly competitive? Because they keep on getting better and better, and soon they're going to be able to, catch the Starship piece and then kick it back in the sky within 12 hours or less.
Yeah. I think the lead for SpaceX is measured in years, and it doesn't mean that somebody with deep pockets can't come in and buy down this arbitrage or this differential between the number 2 and number 3 company and just fund it. So there's nothing that necessarily prevents that from happening, but I view these things as market share and margin share. In the mobile phone world, there's a few clear winners on margin share, and the market share can be fragmented, 8 ways to Sunday when you have a 1.3 billion unit a year industry. But you have to really look at margin share, to me, and market share.
All right, let's get back to, go ahead.
Herbert, I think one of the things we should talk about is whether or not Tesla investors can get an allocation of shares for SpaceX. I'm not sure if that's on the agenda or not, but I know a lot of Tesla investors would love an opportunity to do so. And there have been a number of, of ideas floated around out there. And Phil Bicel put out a nice post that was apparently liked by Elon. Now, in the post, there were 4 different ideas. And there's only one, in my opinion, that has a chance of working. And that's this idea of a priority IPO allocation or directed share program. And there's actually some precedents for this. Airbnb did this. They reserved some shares for their hosts. 7% of the Airbnb shares were reserved for hosts. You had to be a super host and you had to have a certain tenure to qualify. Uber reserved shares for drivers. 3% of the Uber shares at IPO were reserved for drivers. They needed to have 2,500 lifetime trips, and it's about 1 to 2 years of driving time and good standing. Robinhood actually did something even more crazy. They reserved 20 to 35% of their shares at their IPO. Now they had the advantage; they used their own app called IPO Access to distribute the shares. But the interesting thing about this one is demand was so high that they had to allocate shares randomly. So I would imagine that SpaceX might find something similar challenge. Now, the problem with SpaceX is, and Tesla, is that Airbnb and Uber knew exactly who their hosts and their drivers were. Elon has talked about rewarding longtime Tesla shareholders. Tesla may not really know exactly who their longtime shareholders are unless you're directly registered with the company in some way. But if you hold your shares at Robinhood or E-Trade or Schwab or Fidelity, Tesla may not know who you are. So there's going to be an interesting challenge, I think, if Elon wants to go down this path. But this is the most feasible path of the 4 that Phil put out there, in my opinion. The other ones are, I think, fairly unworkable.
Yeah, we'll explore that in our show this weekend with Phil a little bit more. But okay, this is it. Tesla, regardless, right? So this is one: is Tesla shareholders want to invest in SpaceX? Some of them. You guys have all kind of give it a good context of whether or not it is a great investment, better than Tesla or not. But the other thing is, regardless, Tesla is still a beneficiary because having space-based data centers and Starlink, and then all that working together with Tesla's robots, data centers, AI, all that, it's all going to be incredibly powerful. What is this topic? The next topic is Tesla Synergy. Did you want to address that, James?
I think I covered it again. It's just the combination of all of the companies together. It's beyond mind melting in terms of considering, think of the cars, the data that they have, the neural networks that controls them, transposing that technology into humanoid robots. And then you've got the satellites that they control. It's pretty clear that Optimus robot and cars will all have some version of probably Starlink in them in the future. Then you've got the power to support maybe the humanoid robots. If things go to hell in a handbasket on planet Earth and there's no power, of course, that's when things like solar and megapacks will really come in. But the learning from the scale, Elon is obsessed with scale, doing things really fast. The car is learning from billions of miles. I mean, the FSD mileage is just going completely vertical right now. And as each day goes by, it learns more and more and sees more edge cases. And the mind-blowing part is the patchwork of all these different companies together just reinforce one another. We know that the Cybertruck has bulletproof steel because of SpaceX and so much more. That's the real interesting story for me. And that's why we kicked it off at the beginning of, he could potentially control 3 of the top 10 companies on the planet because they all feed off each other and they all support each other. And there's no other company not even remotely close. And then we look back at the TAMs that he's going after. It's not by accident he's going after the biggest TAMs on Earth. That's all part of his plan too. He just doesn't say it out loud. So, synergy.
Yeah. Anybody else? Cern?
James said it well.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk. The next big announcement that Elon made was he's called FSD Solved. He was interviewed. It was asked the question at the XAI hackathon. I don't know if I should play it because I think we've done many shows where we already showed it. But he basically said FSD in his mind is, on its way to being solved. And then he said that we will likely remove the no one in the cars in Austin robotaxi within 3 weeks. So that is a big. I'm here, but it's a big statement from him. Do you guys want to make a comment on that, Cern? I haven't heard from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a distinction between solved and something that's going to be continually improved. So I think the first thing to say is FSD is going to continue to improve, and it will so for years, if not decades. That's the first thing. But the fact that Elon is using the word solved should give everybody a lot of confidence. We've seen over the years that Elon has visibility into this months, if not 6 months ahead of time versus everybody else. Right? The FSD versions that we're getting in our vehicles now, Elon and his team have had visibility into this for a long time. So I find it very encouraging that Elon is using the word solved. Right? And if it's not technically solved, I mean, I guess the question is, can FSD ever really be solved? Can it? In some ways, no, because it can always be improved. That was my first point. So, what does solved really mean in this case? I take the view that solved means that it's, much safer than a human driver. And Elon's throwing out there twice as safe, 10 times as safe, eventually, 40 times as safe. Those are all kind of challenging metrics, right? Because there's a wide variety of safety amongst human drivers. So, you can lose, it's pretty wishy-washy in terms of what some of these things mean. But clearly, FSD is at a point where they are on the cusp of being ready to take out the safety monitor or the driver in California. That's an exciting moment. It looks like that's going to come maybe at the end of this year in Austin and hopefully early next year for California. That will be a milestone moment for the company. It's one that we've been waiting for a long time.
Yeah, I think it'll be received well, and it says that Tesla has that release already in hand, and they're testing it, and they're running internal test cases against it. They have their own QA levels that they have to put it through, and what it's probably saying is that it's testing well enough to meet those thresholds. So there's ways Tesla can predict this. Sure, there can be some unplanned bugs that are found once it's deployed in volume, but they can compare their relative internal test results to their prior models and prior releases and see the relative improvement. So if he's saying that now, they have the release, and I could see also convergence between robotaxi and our personal cars and those releases. So it's solving those last few things. And there's a bug. Right now there's this mapping bug that they clearly have to solve. But in terms of safety, I feel completely safe with the car driving. Of course, am I covering the wheel and the brake? That's what you're supposed to do as supervised driving. But I feel completely safe. I feel like there's 8 sets of eyes always on the road, and in making better decisions. Everything's computer. No, everything is these decisions are being made in a way that just the average human it's going to be just so much better than the average human. This is going to be a milestone in tech that we're going to look back, maybe not us, but maybe 50 years from now, people are going to look back and say people manually drove and 43,000 people a year were killed in the United States because people manually drove these things. And this is the start of it. And maybe we want to touch on some of the other announcements today from other companies on their self-driving, or we touch on that later.
I just want to say one thing to layer into what Jeff said. 2 days ago, I saw 3 things happen within the space of 30 minutes. One, I saw a robotaxi in Sonoma. It was pitch dark. It was white with golden writing. That's way north. That's like a Napa area. Very bizarre. Second thing, I had a white Cybertruck and a silver Cybertruck and my Cybertruck. We were all driving side by side in the freeway. Never happened before. I wish could have reached my phone to record it. And then the third thing happened. I moved into freezing fog, where every car and truck was driving at about 20 to 25 miles an hour, and my car just zipped 70 miles an hour in hurry mode in freezing fog. I couldn't see anything, but I had absolute confidence that the car could. And I know there's a way it sees through that fog, but it is very mind-blowing how good FSD is, and my confidence is through the roof right now. So the question is within 3 weeks. It's one of the rapid fire questions later we'll come to.
Okay. I had a debate with a couple guys yesterday, Brian and Nick. And my position on this was that when Elon says that unsupervised FSD is solved, like you, Cern, that means he's actually seeing the releases that we haven't seen yet. But I think in his mind, it's solved, meaning to say that it's already safer than a human. In fact, maybe twice as safe as a human. He did point out that they will have a larger model January and February, sometime January or February, and when that happens, it'll be 10 times safer than a human. So that to me was the thing, not whether or not, yes, the mapping needs to be fixed, or the parking needs to be better, or the speed control needs to be better, but is it safer than a human now? And it is. He's confident about that, and they probably have the data to back that up, and we're waiting for them to say that data. And then when he was asked this question about, what is the last remaining technical hurdles to get to unsupervised FSD? He said, it's practically solved now. We'll have a larger model in January. Then he said AI 5 in 2027 and AI 6 in 2028. So he's continuing to refer to the chips as being very, very important to the progress of full self-driving. So like you said, Cern, this is not solved. There's always going to get improvement. But we're talking about, is it safer than human today? Is it going to be 20 times safer than human someday? Is it going to be superhuman, which 20 times safer is already, right? Just impossible to be hit ever. Yes, we're going to get there. And it'll get there probably in AI5. And I think in AI5, I've been told that that's the inference compute that's required for you to be able to do interactivity with a car. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's like, to actually tell the car what to do. Don't park here, go there, that kind of thing. And then he also said, the other thing he said was this. He said, Waymo never really had a chance against Tesla. This will be obvious in hindsight. Who wanted to make a comment on that?
So if you look at the cost, and as Jeff always says, the fingers in the pie, there's too many people feeding at the table for anybody to ever make any realistic profits. The cost basis, their per unit economics, I think Jeff says as well, is very seriously flawed. It's not going to work. Not going to make it.
Okay, Cern?
Yeah, the cost advantage that Tesla has is enormous and probably growing by the day, and particularly once they start popping out cybercabs. I just don't see how Waymo is going to survive in the market. Interestingly, there was a recent report by Morgan Stanley that suggests that Waymo will have the largest market share by 2032. But so I'm just not sure how that's going to work out when they themselves predict that Tesla's cost will be below that of vehicle ownership. They assume that Tesla's cost was about 59 cents per mile. I think actually they could be more like 30, 25, or even lower at that point. So it's kind of interesting how, the analyst community, particularly Morgan Stanley, who kind of gets Tesla in many ways, doesn't have very high expectations for the adoption of robotaxi, autonomous vehicles. They think that it will only account for about a third of rideshare by 2032. That's a third of rideshare, and it's about 0.5%, about half of 1% of all miles traveled will be autonomous by 2032. It's one of the most ridiculous reports and assumptions I've ever seen. So anyway, I think Tesla will have a massive cost advantage. Also, just to go back to the question about FSD being solved, the other consideration, of course, we're on this march of nines, right? FSD is going to continually be improved. The biggest issue that Tesla faces actually is not the technology, but the cost of dealing with potential lawsuits. Because at scale, even if you're 99.9999% safe, at scale you're going to have to contend with a number of accidents and obviously a number of deaths at some point. And so the more you scale that, the more potential lawsuits you may have to deal with. And of course, this is absent any sort of federal legislation that provides some kind of liability cap. We'll have to see if that comes as part of this. But let's assume it doesn't. Let's assume that Tesla potentially is liable for any accident. Then you want to scale your business so that you're still within the reasonable bounds in terms of what your liability cost might be for the inevitable accidents.
That's a fantastic point.
And I do want to say one thing regarding Morgan Stanley, because it needs to be said. People think Morgan Stanley is brilliant and good and everything else because they were good in the past. But they were only good in the past because they had one guy that got it. His name was Adam Jonas. Now, if you go to the Morgan Stanley webpage, you can look up Adam Jonas. They still have him as the auto guy, but he moved in August to move to AI, which is where he belongs. AI and embodied AI, which is basically one day when Tesla gets categorized as what it actually is, he'll be the analyst for that. So he's moving to where Tesla is, but they're not there yet because of the way TradFi works. So that's just one thing I want to point out regarding Morgan Stanley. The new guy at Morgan Stanley is just like every other car analyst on the planet. Worthless. Just want to say that.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, no, it's frustrating. You got, the Gordon Johnsons of the world, whose dad was at General Motors his entire life. And his job is to save his dad's bag. So stick a knife in Tesla every opportunity. I mean, these analysts, they should be called out and persecuted for dishonesty. And sorry for being on my soapbox, but that needed to be said.
Just to be clear, what this guy did was, and Jeff and I did a show on Monday on it. He actually, number one, raised his base price, and he raised their bull case by $60, from 800 to 860, because now they're adding in Optimus at $60 per share. So first of all, thank you, Morgan Stanley, for doing that, because now all the others will start to feel comfortable adding actual dollars based on robots. We'll wait for ARK Invest to follow and do that too. But then he didn't downgrade. He just called it a neutral from a buy, and that's like, it's about timing, right? He's thinking something like that. So that part about it is the frustrating part.
But then he also has a bear target of 170. So you got that range, very narrow little range,
ridiculous.
$170 to 860. Such precision. It's like they're just they're all completely worthless.
It is kind of
Completely
worthless when you do that.
It's just-
I know.
Sorry.
Well, this was the same company. I know. I mean, they had a $10 bear case at one point. I mean, it's a very wide range. That's the way we talked about it. And I think a new analyst comes in, don't understand their prior accuracy, and they probably want to just reset. Kind of like when new CEOs come in and they want to kitchen sink a quarter.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I find that there are a few good analysts that are thinking ahead, that move their price targets in advance of some of these things happening. But a lot of them are, honestly, they're just chasing.
So Rivian did a presentation today, did a live stream. They said that they now have their version of FSD. They have autonomy. Jeff, you watched it. What did you hear? It sounded like you're kind of impressed, but it's just a presentation, Jeff. So, but okay, tell us.
Well, that's what I said, Herbert. It's a PowerPoint. They have to. I mean, you have to deliver, but you can't. If you're following EVs, you're following autonomy. You have to look at these things in isolation and understand their probability of success. And so, if you look at their approach, so they're developing their own silicon. I mean, TSMC is going to fab it, but they're doing the design work, co-design work with them. TSMC fabs it, so that's a big move, right? Because they've been on NVIDIA, so they are trying to take this full stack vertical integration approach. The presentation was impressive, and they're building an impressive computer. But all the other things are still true. Rivian has to scale themselves out of this premium play and into. I mean, they are pre-ramp where Tesla was kind of with the Model Y and 3 and introducing, the $40,000 to $50,000 vehicle, and now Tesla is trying to move into the $25,000 to $35,000 range with their new vehicles. So you think hardware wise, and you also think what's happening with Tesla's doing with silicon and what their plans are for full self-driving. These things are very hard to predict. So they're going after it. I applaud them for it. They have a price point that's lower, but we don't know what this is yet. And this is the thing. We don't know what we're dealing with. We don't know the real world viability. We had all these FSD testers. We had all these trackers. We had everything going on with Tesla. And even then, it was still difficult to understand, how far away were we from it being, like the conversation we just had of it being done. So Rivian's on a journey. Let them be on a journey. And let's see, if another American company solves this, and this is, done with American tech and truly done from the ground up, I think that's an impressive thing. And I think that's what we want. So let's see what happens. But again, all we have right now is a presentation.
Okay. Yeah. And they said that they're using LiDAR. And then they said that, Jeff, didn't you say it's point-to-point city also? City.
Yeah.
Driving?
They had a very by the way, I think it was very well communicated. So look, this is where we're at today. We think in the first half of, early part of next year, we'll have point-to-point driving. And then the next step is going to be basically, I call it eyes off, or so unsupervised. And then they would continue to progress after that. They didn't talk about robo-taxis or doing anything like that. Remember, they still have to get their auto business to scale and build vehicles consistently profitably. But yeah, they have a roadmap and they're pricing it. It's interesting. This is a company that is bleeding a lot of cash and is in a precarious position. And here they're coming in and undercutting the price of FSD. I found that to be interesting because I don't think we've done price discovery yet with real price discovery with FSD. I think Tesla's been toying with the price because it's been pre-launch and it didn't work. And so there was only a certain number of people I think that would want to expose and be exposed to pre-launch a product like this. So I don't think we've gone through discovery yet of what is the willingness to pay and what should the price be. So I don't think we're there yet because I just don't think there's not enough exposure to your car driving you everywhere yet.
Yeah, and I think Elon used to always say, PowerPoints are hard, production at scale is really easy.
Yeah,
Kidding.
the opposite. Yeah.
It's brutal. I mean, they're in such a hole, and they're in such a market that's cutthroat, and we've seen how difficult it is even for Tesla to sell Cybertrucks. And you know, that was kind of a death knell for the F-150 Lightning, and now the dinky Rivian car, which apparently is a good SUV, but just too expensive. Not going to make it. So.
I would love Rivian to survive. I really would. But when I look at their financials, they've lost $26 billion. Yeah. They're losing, roughly, depending on the quarter, $1 billion a quarter in negative cash flow. They have $7 billion in cash. Can they raise more money? Sure, maybe. But at some point, I think the financials catch up to them if they can't turn the corner really fast. And I hope they do. I really hope they do. I would love for them to be successful. I am not cheering against them at all. I think their vehicles are cool, and I'd like to see them make it. But for me, the financial reality for them is not looking good.
It's too few units, and it's 1.2 billion a quarter, by the way. So it's
I think what they're doing is they're setting themselves up to be either a software license partner or a buyout. And that's why they say, hey, we're doing our own chips, we're doing our own software, and we've got our platform. I had this fantastic interview with Walter Piecyk, and that's going to come out this weekend. He's a VC. He asked the question at the Tesla earnings call. He studies autonomy, and I'm telling you, I haven't met another person who knows autonomy better than this guy because he actually knows everything. He's tested everything. I was very, very impressed. And what he said was, OEMs won't license Tesla. But OEMs may not and likely will not license a Waymo either. Same reason. They're too big of a company. But they will likely go and find, AV Ride. What's that company called in UK?
Wave.
Wave. And then now Rivian. That's the kind of partner that these OEMs would want to go after. Something that's not too big. You already got started. Let me partner with you. Let's get going.
It's too late.
Yeah, and I think there's just too much fog in the cockpit. We don't know where a lot of these FSD systems where they're really at. We have these claims being made, like we saw the MKBHD video of he claimed he could engage full self-driving in a Xiaomi on a New Jersey street. He basically said, "Oh, it's just like Tesla." No, it's actually not. I wish there was this global test protocol that they would go through. And I'm going to get all 500 comments. Oh, that's what SAE love. No, it isn't. It actually isn't. So we're really trying to not measure just levels of automation. We're trying to measure goodness and how well these things perform. And it's just not clear where some of these other things are. And it makes things confusing. Like, I don't actually know. I think we're going to get a bunch. As soon as you get, Rivian is now taking the wraps off, and now they're going to start taking a controlled rides with influencers, and they're going out. And now you're going to start seeing issues. It feels like we're where Tesla was a couple of years ago. So it's just interesting to see, like, there's going to be so many announcements. It's going to confuse so many analysts. But the question is how well do these systems perform, and can they economically scale?
And I think
Don't
until
underestimate a company. Oh, sorry. I was just saying we have a time issue. Don't underestimate a sugar daddy that would fund one of these things for years, losing money. That'll happen. That's why we don't have transparency in how these robotaxi services are actually doing financially.
it sounds like Rivian and Volkswagen are a match made in heaven.
Could be.
I just found the Xiaopeng CEO. He flew to California, tested FSD, and he said, this is incredible. It's level 4 at least, using those terms. And he said, we're going to have to catch up and do better. So at least these CEOs are being in China. Surprisingly, they're a lot more transparent about, we're going to copy and follow Tesla, and they're ahead. At least they're saying that, but some of the others are just making up stuff.
We've heard from Li Jun, the CEO of Xiaomi. We've heard from the CEO of Xiaopeng. We've heard from the CEOs about where they believe Tesla is and where they're at. But we have these people writing articles and going over, oh, they can do that. They already do that over there. Like we were commenting back. I'm like, well, no, they don't. You can't just hand wave this stuff. It's either working at a certain level in performance or it isn't. And I also think we've talked about the bias, the implicit bias too, with testing Tesla FSD. Every release has been the best release for us because, quite frankly, with just some small revisions, that's honestly been true for a number of years. But the real question is where are these things at? It's not all about regulators. It's about the acceptance from the public. And it'll be interesting thing to see how this all plays out. I think there's if I were to fast forward a couple of months into the future, I think the key here is how do you safely get a lot of product out on the road and you just gain the trust, you earn the trust of the public. Because once you reach, I've seen this before, once you reach those critical thresholds, you're allowed to have a problem. You're allowed to have an issue. And people are like, okay, but you did the other 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 rides perfectly. Let's go figure this one out and keep things moving because it's generally safer.
You don't think we're there yet with Tesla? Just nowhere near.
Now, I wouldn't say nowhere near, but we're on a trajectory to get there, and we need a lot more cars on the road. We're not there yet. You need to be in a major city like Austin or Chicago or LA where you just see them nonstop everywhere. You see the iconic robotaxi branding. You see them, you know that they're a Tesla, and you just see them everywhere, and nobody's behind the wheel, and you don't think twice. We're not there yet.
Okay. James, you want to get started with our quick fire questions? You're on mute.
A quick slide. We can pop them up, or we just walk through it. Oh, I changed the deck. Let me see. There it is. Yeah. Dropped it in. First of all, we kind of covered some of this loosely, but I'd like to put people on the spot. Robotaxi timeline. When will the passenger come out in Austin, Texas? Now, the big thing that I heard from that presentation with Elon about that hackathon was in 3 weeks, which means end of the year. And he's pushing for that. He seemed pretty confident in my mind. So can we trust his 3 weeks?
New Year's Eve.
Yeah. I have a debate. I have a bet with Tesla Boomer Mama, Alexandra. She forced me to do a bet with her. And I said, I don't have tremendous conviction of this, but she forced me to do a bet. And it's expensive because it's $400. Because that's how many people are listening in on the space. And so the bet is she believes it'll be after January, after the new year, not this year. And the reason she says is that, I don't know, she came up with 3 reasons, which to me didn't make sense. It's like, the safety drivers that they hired, there's something about their contract will end by the end of this year and they'll want to do it for some reason, something to do with that. And I said, no, I think that he'll do it the day before the year ends. and then they'll just do a few cars just to say that they did it before the year ended.
Yep, I agree with that. Cern?
Yeah, New Year's Eve will be when we see it.
And by the way, that's a busy night for taxis. So the busiest of the year.
That's right. You may
Everybody's
not want to do that. Mhm.
Jeff?
Perfect night.
It'll be a gradient. It will happen. It'll be a couple of them. Then it'll be handfuls, dozens. It won't be a snap your finger and then they're all out one day. That's not going to occur that way. But yeah, I could see them starting at the very end of December or at some point in January. Sure.
So I don't have her here to explain, but she had 3 reasons she thinks legally or whatever that Tesla might have decided to do it for the new year versus the previous year. And I'm like, I don't know if any of that really is true. So we have an expensive bet. We'll see.
Okay. Speaking of expensive bets, a lot of people want to know from you guys, you experts, should they bite the bullet and buy FSD outright now in case it gets more expensive, or pay the $99 a month and take the savings and buy Tesla stock? Herbert, I know your daughter, I think, has the $99 deal, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yeah, my daughter has that, and my 2 cars, I did buy it outright. And the reason is because thank you to the audience here. I've got tremendous amount of Tesla referrals, so I had those points, and so I used them to buy that. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, James. We ended up buying it for my daughter outright last week because she got Tesla referral points too. So all 3 cars have it all outright. That's a tough question. The only thing I would say is that I believe, and could be completely wrong on this one, that all 3 of my cars are all Teslas. Their valuation will go up, not go down. So right now, of course, Tesla cars resale value has fallen off the cliff the last several years. I think it's going to pop back up. In fact, I don't know what the number is. I maybe not $100,000, but I think at some point, once they prove that robotaxi works, once they prove that you can take your customer-owned car and put it into the network and make money, maybe up to $330,000 a year, why wouldn't the value of your car? And this was Cern Basher's, Tesla Basher Mama's spreadsheet that I was relying on years ago. So I said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and pay for it straight because I think that I'm going to make that money back anyways.
Brilliant, Herbert. Brilliant. James, I think to answer this question, my thinking has evolved on this. My thinking is for an individual Tesla owner that I used to think that, and Elon has said this, that the value of FSD will go up over time. But I think because this is a safety technology, and if you're just using FSD for your own personal vehicle and you're not using it as a commercial vehicle, I think they'll keep the price of FSD low. So the answer to this question, I think, would be you're probably better off to pay the monthly fee and invest the difference. Now, there is some chance, I think, that Tesla could raise the price of FSD. So that's the risk that you're running with that scenario. I do think Tesla will charge more for FSD if you're using it in a commercial enterprise, right? If you're putting your car in the fleet and you're making $25,000, $30,000 a year or whatever the number is, Tesla's going to get a cut of that, right? And so in that case, it's effectively raising the price of FSD. So, this is a tough one. If you have, lots of money, then what's the cost of FSD? No big deal. If you don't have a lot of money, then paying it by the month probably makes sense anyway because you're earning income monthly and it makes sense to match your expenses with your income. So that's the other layer I think I would add on top of this. But my thinking has evolved. I do think that Tesla is likely to keep the cost of FSD low for people because of the safety benefits. It's kind of like the cost of a seatbelt, right? It's pretty cheap, even though it can save lives, and it really is worth more than what it costs. Similarly with this.
Exactly. I think I'm in Jeff's boat too. I bought it twice outright. Once nearly 6.5 years ago, which may have not been a prudent move. Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, I think just purchasing cars is just not been a great move financially. Make a lot of other great moves that can dwarf this situation. The answer is there's not one answer for one person, to be honest with you. And I say this a lot, including investment advice as well. The key thing here is there going to be value appreciation now to sell a car that has it fully outright, and will it be significant? I think the answer could be we could be at that point right now. So I have it outright in all my vehicles, but I think that could be different for different people at different points in time based on your budget and based on your risk tolerance.
Good stuff. I need to clarify this next question regarding space data centers. We already know there is a GPU in space from NVIDIA, but this is regarding what Elon Musk does with Musk Industries and SpaceX. When he does build those space centers in space, I believe he'll be the first to do it at scale. Which chips will be up there first? Herbert.
Oh, it's going to be Tesla's chips. They already make AI5. Now, do you think that by 2017, that's when AI5 will first roll out?
2027.
They'll have 2027. Will they have enough? And I think that all of you just said, you don't think that AI data centers will be up and running until 2028 or longer. Don't think it's going to come next year. So I think absolutely it's a whole plan. He designed the reason why AI5 has been delayed was specifically for this. He wanted to make it a new architecture. He wanted to make sure that it can apply for both the bots and the cars, but also now the data centers, and specifically for this reason. So I think that's why it was delayed. He's been chips on his mind for the last year. He has nightmare. This is what he dreams about. So yeah, it's designed for this.
Cern?
If it's,
Intel.
Yeah, if it's right. If it's SpaceX Tesla data centers, then it'll be Tesla chips. But let's say Google or somebody contracts with SpaceX to build a data center.
TPUs.
It could be TPUs, it could be NVIDIA, it could be something else. So I think there's a possibility that SpaceX is not the first one to do it. They may, take a customer and do it with them first.
Yeah. And what's very important to mention as well for the audience, this is all about inference, not training. Training will probably happen on the Earth, but inference will happen in space.
Yep.
Jeff? Slam dunk, I think.
Could be NVIDIA, could be Tesla. I think it's fine. I think Sam Altman announced that he's doing silicon, and they're going to have an announcement forthcoming. Maybe it's his. I'm just kidding.
Enter the meme with the three guys on the bench, all looking at Elon's homework. It's hilarious. Okay, SpaceX shares. What are the odds that Tesla shareholders will receive SpaceX shares? There's a lot of positivity there. There's a lot of hope. I would love it to happen, but my gut says probably not.
69%, James.
69.42%. Okay, winner.
Yeah, I like that also. It's higher than 50-50. I think
Really?
69 is a good number. Yeah, you're under 50% chance, eh?
Yeah.
Elon said
it's one of those things where he's not in control. He'd love to do it, but the powers that be don't want that to happen.
Sure.
Think of who manages the IPO. The Goldman Sachs of the world and all those players. They want their piece. They don't want to dilute their franchise. My thoughts.
The reason why I think it's higher than 50% is, again, Phil made a post which Elon liked, and it was about this very matter.
Yep. Well, I saw that post as well.
So
it's a good one.
And as I look at that, the only viable option out of the four that Phil put out there was this idea of this directed share program that Uber and Robinhood and Airbnb has done before. That is possible. It's viable. The question is, are Tesla shareholders going to like the way it's conducted if it's a random draw? Maybe not.
No, that'll piss them off, especially the long-term people like us.
Yep.
Jeff, I'm going to add a twist on this for you. Okay, it sounds like the team here believe we'll get SpaceX shares. What about XAI?
These companies are interconnected. I've said it from day one. Tesla powered XAI. Tesla engineers seeded XAI. I don't know why. It just feels like people are trying to avoid ultimately this convergence. They are working on different things, but there's a lot of convergence happening. So we'll see. I agree with Cern. Some of this isn't under Elon's direct control, but I think he's going to exert a lot of effort and energy towards it. And I have some rapid fire questions if these are if these are it.
Yeah, that's it.
So I would kind of bring it back to like what we've been talking about, like Tesla in space and like what's going to happen 3 years from now. We're 3 weeks from ending the quarter, and nobody wants to talk about anything tactical sometimes. But in 3 weeks, we have this interesting convergence. We talked about the safety rider coming out, and this kind of being a big deal for Tesla going either unsupervised or certainly robo-taxis that aren't supervised at all, and it's a big event for Tesla. But then of course they're ending this quarter. Nobody really knows where this quarter is going to land from a vehicle perspective. There's this wide range of guesses, and just not so much trying to like, what's your number, forget about that. Just how do we think, in week one, we're going to be right after the new year, we're going to get some numbers on deliveries, and then maybe we have cars running autonomously in Austin. And how is the market going to just take these two together? Are we going to have the same kind of visceral reactions, or is there just going to be a lot of smoothing of this and saying, "Hey, look, we get it. We know what's happening with hardware deployment." I guess it's going to depend on the numbers, but just interesting on what your feedback is on vehicle deliveries and going unsupervised or going unmonitored and how those two may play together in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I'll take that first. One, deliveries 350 to 440 range is huge. We don't know where we're going to land. China's strong. USA is a black box. Europe is weak. China could swing it. I think the key thing to focus on will be FSD uptake and megapack business. That'll be important. I think there could be a buying opportunity if there is a crappy number like 350, 360, but the expectations are so low, it could surprise the upside, which means it could get a bounce anyway. I think we're very close from a TA perspective to an all-time high, close to 500. I think we could breach that in the next 3 to 4 weeks. But then again, if the numbers are terrible for Q4, we could get a nice dip to the low 400s, and that'll be a buying opportunity for many people that are missing out. That's my take. But you're dead right. Nobody seems to care. And that's actually a good thing, because we should be forward-looking to all the good stuff that's coming and not be obsessed with production numbers of cars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to me, it's a bit like, transition of Amazon, as a bookseller into other businesses, right? So as long as books don't go off a cliff, then fine, right? So I think over time, these quarterly delivery numbers, right, production delivery numbers they become less relevant. And as long as things just aren't falling apart there, then, we're going to focus on the future of the company.
Yeah, I sense that there's already built in that there's expectation that it's going to be smaller numbers, lower numbers than it was Q3. That's the general expectation. But if it does lower than their expectation, then there will be a sell-off for just a blip, and the focus will go back to autonomy. And you and I have followed this so closely, but it seems like institutional analysts have all started talking autonomy. They've all tested autonomy. They've all now understanding it better. They're building it into their models, and they've started to move. Now, are they fully there yet? No, but I think that you're right, that's the beautiful thing about them coming at the same time. There's progress in autonomy. It's a robotaxi, and yet, there's a delay in a dip on auto.
Yeah. Also, I would just add, Jeff, real quick, that I do think that we might see a positive surprise on the energy deployment number.
Yeah, energy's interesting because it looks like refined lithium is becoming more and more constrained globally. I have no idea in terms of Tesla certainly has tremendous access. I don't think that they're going to be supply lock, but it's just an interesting thing to watch as it relates to energy. I think the line is actually going to be around free cash flow positive versus negative. I think that's going to be a key thing for people to watch. All of a sudden, if this thing flips negative, I think people could get a little bit uneasy. It all depends on what the story is. And also, if there's really appreciable uptake on FSD and, of course, the deployment of robotaxis, if those two things are there and there's appreciable uptake on both, there's a lot to offset in term with investor sentiment. But I think watching the free cash flow piece is going to be important.
But we should warn everybody, right? The next year, expect free cash flow to go negative and zero because Tesla's going to invest significantly across the board everywhere.
They won't let it go
I don't-
zero. No.
Ooh, I
know.
think that's where I'll bet you too. I think they will let it go to zero next year.
I think they can turn on so many spigots of free cash flow. They will not let it go zero. They're not going to break that record. It's not the way they manage that thing like a tight financial ship. Cern, what do you think?
I agree with you, James. I think that Tesla has shown that they've been very careful about this, particularly during
Yeah,
the
what's
time when
Herbert talking
EVs
about?
I will bet all three of you because the bet
the bear.
next year is so. It's not a bear. It's just like actually, I'd rather
The
communicate.
Bear Bowl.
I'd rather communicate to everybody today to expect negative free cash flow next year because of good reasons, right? Investing in data centers, investing in robots, investing in robo taxis, all that. I want Tesla to really invest and maybe announce another gigafactory, another mega pack factory. This is the year they're going to invest heavily. Okay, this 1 year we're going to let free cash flow go negative. I'm
They have
perfectly
42
fine with
billion
that.
of cash as well. So
I'm fine with that.
anyway,
Okay, I've got one last quick fire question to Cern. People know that when Cern hosted my show on my behalf, he was Cernbert, and he was evil. Check him out, man. He was evil. And then today he introduced himself as Tesla Basher Mama. That's the evil version of Tesla Boomer Mama. So what, Cern, what is your Jeff name? Are you Jeff Cern? Or are you Jeff Lutzbert? Or Lutzer? What are you?
I'm gonna have to think about that one. I haven't yet, had to sub
The
in
evil
for Jeff
Jeff
on the
name.
show.
You
Is
don't
it a
have
burning
to.
question by the audience.
Cern, don't listen to him.
He has
he's
to now at this point. He has to at this point. It's like
Well, one day when
Sir,
I have to sub in for Jeff on a show, I will reveal the name at that point.
the
This is where
evils.
half the audience clicks out of the video.
And it's fine. We're leaving. Okay, James, as always, thank you. You always come so very well prepared. And of course, we have the mighty Cern and the executive Jeff Lutz. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.